Excellent, that's 3 o'clock now. So, as I did mention yesterday, this afternoon I'm going to be discussing the Gatikara Sutta. It's in the 81st Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya. And basically it has one important part to it, and it's well worth reading out just for that. And here it's coming. So because it's a teaching of the Buddha, I always do the Namo Tassa first of all. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. So this is with Gatikara. Thus have I heard. And for those who are not familiar with the suttas, why in most of the suttas, not all of them because many of them are abbreviated, why do most of the suttas begin with that phrase, thus have I heard? Oh, come on. It's because that after the Buddha passed away, then they had a big meeting of all of as many arahats, enlightened monastics as they could find, and invited them to the Satapana cave, big cave around Rajagaha, And there they were to recite as many of the teachings as they could remember. Please know that in those days that there was no written books. There was obviously no recordings on an iPhone. This was 2,500 years ago. And so the only way to record the teachings was for good enlightened beings to remember them by heart and be able to chant them. And that's why they had this big, you call it a conference, and all the monks who'd heard something would be able to recite those teachings. And they would be able to, the whole Sangha there, 500, would be able to listen to them, and also if they saw any mistakes or heard any mistakes, they could correct those teachings. And that's how it began, from that verbal recitation. And of course, one of the persons who would be in that meeting would be Ananda. But Ananda was not an enlightened one when the Buddha passed away. So they had a big discussion, should we invite him or should we not invite him? Because you want accurate memories of what the Buddha taught. But then what happened, because people knew he wasn't an arahat yet, the day before the meeting, the conference, he really put extra special energy into meditating. In fact, he meditated all night, trying to become enlightened, so that he could attend this important meeting with all the other 499 arahats, without any lack of confidence. And imagine that was something similar here. Suppose at the end of this retreat, I made the announcement that each one of you had attained full enlightenment, except for... Where's Freddie? Oh, translation inside here. Okay. Well, suppose, Freddie, doing the translation, suppose I said everyone had become fully enlightened with psychic powers except for Freddie. The only one who didn't make it. I can imagine his face now. Of course, Freddie's a wonderful monk meditator. Monk? Yeah, monk in the future. I can see the picture of him. But anyway, this was Ananda. Ananda decided that he'd have to give it everything he had to try and become enlightened that evening. 499 of his friends were fully enlightened, he wasn't. So he meditated and meditated and meditated and meditated and meditated and meditated. And when the dawn came up, he was as unenlightened as when he started. All that effort, all that time, all that sacrifice, he hadn't gotten anywhere. I'll tell you this story because it's very meaningful for you. So he decided, the sun had risen, and so he decided he still had another hour or so before the meeting began. So he decided to take a nap. He was really tired. He'd meditated all night. So he went to his room and went to lay down, really tired. And as he lay down, I hope many of you know this story. As he went to lay down, before his head hit the pillow, he became the 500th enlightened one. Just at the last moment, but still well done. And then once he was fully enlightened, he kind of thought, well, if I just go to the conference, I would have to waste so much time explaining that I'm now an arahat, an enlightened being. So what he deliberately arrived late, on purpose. And by this time they'd waited for him and waited for him. and they locked the door. So he had no way to get in as a normal person. So now he was an enlightened being. I'm talking about Ananda's entry to this big meeting of the 500 monks, or 500 arahats. And when he arrived late, he went through the door, through the keyhole. So a big light went through the door, through the keyhole, and then from that big light, Ananda emerged. That's what we call making an entrance. And that was enough to convince all the others, sadhu, 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 Ananda. When did that happen? Oh, just this morning. And so he demonstrated that not only had he learned so much at the feet of the Buddha, all those teachings which the Buddha had given, but also he was now a fully enlightened arahat. So that was Ananda's story. And I also mentioned that to each one of you, that sometimes on a retreat, you're meditating and meditating, it's not working, you're not getting anywhere, you get more and more frustrated. And if you do, I encourage you to try the Ananda method. Go back to your room and go and lay down and see whether just before your head hits the pillow, you become another enlightened being. And because I was a mathematician at college before I became a monk, I always remember it's called probability theory. The more times you do that, go and take a nap, the more you increase your probability of it happening to you. Of course, there's other things necessary, but that's an important part of the path. So that's why they said once the meeting was convened and they had the 500 arahats there, it was, what's his name? The monk, Venerable Upali. Venerable Upali, another arahat. Interesting, Venerable Upali. He was the hairdresser of Siddhartha Gautama when Siddhartha Gautama was a prince. And because he was arranged the hairdressing for the prince, he later became the expert on the monks' and nuns' rules, the Vinaya. And of course, obviously, you know the joke which is coming, that he knew about split hairs. That's why he became a very, very finicky expert on the monks' rules of Vinaya. You didn't even grin at that one. You didn't groan. Like split hairs? Like lawyers are very good at split hairs. That's a metaphor for sort of dilemma, something which can be interpreted one of two ways. And so that's why, I'm not sure why, but anyway, he did become eventually the Vinaya expert. So he chanted sort of all the stories behind the monks' rules and the nuns' rules too. And there's some very fascinating stories there. Can I go off on this tangent? Okay, here we go. Some people think the monks' and nuns' rules are boring, but they have some very interesting stories in those. And if ever you want to test this out and try it out, I haven't got the books here, you can look at the Bhikkhuni's Pachitya rule number 8. Easy number to remember, 8. And there, they always have a story first, before the Buddha lays down a training rule. And the story started with a nun's monastery, Bhikkhuni monastery, at the edge of the city. In those days, many of the residences for the bhikkhunis were on the edge of town in order to safeguard them from, if they're in the middle of the jungle, it could be unsafe for them. So this particular monastery was on the edge of town, and one of the bhikkhunis had the duty of cleaning the toilets. And how they would do that, they would have a lot of buckets, a big bucket, and then one of those buckets, when they got filled, then one of the monks had to take them to a place where they could be emptied, where could be no smell and be hygienic enough. But she was emptying this latrine early in the morning, and instead of emptying it in the normal place, no one was around. She had to get up early to do this job. So no one was looking, and she decided to throw it over the wall instead. Now, unfortunately, they have a rule, and this rule is not a Buddhist rule. It's a rule which applies all over the world, and it's called Murphy's Law. I don't know if you've heard this law before. And basically, Murphy's Law says, if it can happen, it will happen. That morning, there happened to be a gentleman on the other side of that wall, right in the spot where this lazy nun threw the bucket of shit over the wall. She couldn't see him, he couldn't see her. Big high wall. And he, in particular, was very well dressed that morning. He was a businessman on the way to the royal court to negotiate a business deal worth a lot of money to him with the king. So of course he was dressed in his finery. And when he was walking down the road, waiting to go to a business meeting, contemplating, how to negotiate this particular product or that particular product, he was busy contemplating when a big bucket of the dirtiest material splashed on top of his head. Imagine that was you. What would you do? Maybe you wouldn't do this, but this man sort of decided to do this. These aren't real monastics in that monastery. Look what they've done to me. No real nun would do this. And so he picked up one of these fire sticks which were on the posts to light the way in the like street lighting. He picked one up and he went into the monastery vowing, these aren't real bhikkhunis, these aren't real nuns, I don't know what they get up to, but I'm going to burn down their monastery for what they've done to me. You can't excuse that. It's not the right way to respond in anger, but this is what happened next. Like the gatekeeper saw that man with a fire stick vowing to bow down the whole monastery, and he thought, what's happened to you? Why are you so upset? And the businessman, said, look what these bhikkhunis have done to me, and I'm supposed to go and see the king now. That's the end of that business deal. And the gatekeeper was a very smart man. He said, wow, you've been blessed with, personal holy water from the bhikkhunis, if that's what you want to call it, but look, I'm so filthy and dirty, I stink all over. And the gatekeeper said, wow, that is so auspicious. Most of us only get sprinkled with holy water which is clean. You get something straight from the source. That really is auspicious. You are so lucky. Really? Yeah, I'm a gatekeeper, I know what goes on. So look, he said, the gatekeeper said to the businessman, just please, go home, get washed, cleaned up, get a new set of clothes, it's still early, and go to the palace. I'm sure you will get a really good contract today from the king. Really? well, you might as well give it a try. Nothing else to do, and don't go burning down monasteries. You get into big trouble then. So he believed the gatekeeper. He went home, get washed, and clean himself up and get some new clothes. And he went to see the king. And no one actually told the king anything what had happened, apparently. It was just his good fortune. He got the contract, which was really, really worthwhile. He made a lot of money out of that contract. And what do business people do? They tell their friends, on how to do business. And so this man said, look, if you really want some good luck in your business, forget about the ordinary holy water. You've seen me give that type of holy water. Get the real stuff, the full power. Yeah, it's a bit unpleasant, but it works. You can always wash up afterwards and buy yourself a new set of 1,000 new sets of clothes with all the profit I'm going to make. And so that's what he did. And so the word got around. If you want really good fortune in your business, go to that monastery and ask for some real holy water. And of course then the Buddha heard about that. And then the Buddha told the nuns, please. And he laid down the rule, to stop all of this shenanigans. And the rule, Pajiti number 8, that a bhikkhuni should not throw the water from the latrine over the monastery wall. And if you do, that's an offence of Pajitiya. And that's where that rule came from. And I love telling that story because people think, oh, you look at these rules or you look at the Dhamma and it's really boring sometimes. If you know where to look, it's really interesting. And I'm just going to, one little extension and I'll stop and I'll go back to the sutta. Many of you know in Thailand how powerful not just the royalty is, but also the military. Sometimes there are many coups in Thailand, and it's the generals who organize those coups and overturn governments. And so one day a major general came to see Ajahn Chah. And when they come, the major general, and usually have a lieutenant general and about 5 or 6 other people who were with him at the time to protect him, and also it gives you a sense of you're a very senior person. So they came to see Ajahn Chah, paid respects, and then had some ordinary chatting. And then he said the main reason he'd come to see Ajahn Chah, that he wanted a blessing, a water blessing, with some holy water. And that's when Ajahn Chah said, we don't do holy water in this monastery. We don't give the holy water if you want some protection and keep your precepts. And you can see the monk, or see the general looking a bit disappointed, being refused. And they looked at him and said, look, I need some holy water, okay? And general's a bit unpredictable. And so Ajahn Chah looked at him and realized he was not going to accept a refusal. So Ajahn Chah said, okay, for you I will make an exception. And you could see the general, the major general, very powerful figure, smiled, he was happy. And Ajahn Chah said, come over here. I said, bend over. I bent over in front of Ajahn Chah. And Ajahn Chah, when I saw this, I thought Ajahn Chah was going too far. He was always an interesting monk to be around because he did push the limits so many times. What he did, he started building up the saliva in his mouth until it was a lot, and then all over the general's hair. Now, don't think that in the northeast of Thailand is got a different customs than the rest of the world. That was really, really demeaning. But Ajahn Chah then said, and that's real holy water. And then, to make it even worse, Ajahn Chah got his hand and rubbed it in. I thought, no, Ajahn Chah's going to jail. And you know what the general did? Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And Ajahn Chah said, you're the only one I've done that ceremony to. You're so lucky and fortunate. And Ajahn Chah got away with it. Amazing. He's got nerve, Ajahn Chah does. Anyway, let's go back. No more stories. So that's actually the Gatikara. Thus I have heard at one time the Buddha, that's why I say thus I have heard, because they'd recite the stories, and if they made any mistakes they would amend it. And that's why, that's where our chanting came from. The chanting was how the monks would remember, and the nuns would remember the teachings of the Buddha. We'd recite it and recite it and recite it and recite it, so many times. And so if we found out that there was a mistake, there would always be someone who realized there was a mistake. And that's how we preserve the teachings of the Buddha from the earliest time. So anyway, that's why I always begin with, thus have I heard. And once again, I've only just started the first sentence, actually the first phrase, not even a sentence yet. And that's already half an hour, only 20 minutes. I'm beating my... Thus have I heard. At one time the Buddha was wandering in the land of the Kosalans, together with a large sangha of monks. And Kosala, is one of the provinces of India at that time. Then the Buddha left the road and at a certain spot he smiled. And then Venerable Ananda thought, what is the cause? What is the reason why the Buddha smiled? Realized ones do not smile for no reason. So Ananda arranged his robe over one shoulder, raised his joined palms towards the Buddha and said, what is the cause? What is the reason why the Buddha smiled? Realized ones do not smile for no reason. And then the Buddha replied, once upon a time, Ananda, there was a market town in this spot named Webalinga. It was so successful and prosperous and full of people. And Kassapa, a blessed one, a perfected one, a fully awakened Buddha, lived, supported by Webalinga. It was here, in fact, that he had his monastery, where he sat and advised the Sangha of monks, the place the previous Buddha lived. And I mentioned that before, there's not just one Buddha. The current Buddha, whose teachings are still very alive, Gautama, who's going to be the next Buddha? Maitreya. Who was the one previous to Gautama? Kassapa, yes. That's what he's talking about. A previous Buddha. And Kassapa, a blessed one, a perfected one, a fully awakened Buddha, lived supported by Webalinga. It was here, in fact, that he had his monastery, where he sat and advised the Sangha of monks. Then Ananda spread out his outer robe, folded in four, and said to the Buddha, well then, sir, may the Blessed One sit here. Then this piece of land will have been occupied by two perfected ones, two fully awakened Buddhas. And the Buddha sat on the seat, spread out. When he was seated, he said to Venerable Ananda, once upon a time, Ananda, there was a market town in this spot named Webalinga. It was a successful and prosperous and full of people. And Kassapa, a blessed one, a perfected one, a fully awakened Buddha, lived supported by Vaibhalinga. It was here, in fact, that he had his monastery, where he sat and advised the Sangha of monks. The Buddha Kassapa had as chief supporter in Vaibhalinga a potter named Gatikara. Gatikara had a dear friend named Jyotipala, a Brahmin student. Then Gatikara addressed Jyotipala. "Come, dear Jyotipala, let's go and see the Blessed One, Kassapa, the perfected one, the fully awakened Buddha. For I regard it as good to see that Blessed One." When he said this, Jyotipala said to Gatikara, "Enough, dear Gatikara. What's the use of seeing this baldy, this fake ascetic?" It's very hard to actually translate, to render words which are meant to be derogatory, put-downs. That's why I translated the word, it was like those with no hair, it was like a baldy, a fake ascetic. It was meant to be derogatory. What am I going to see that fool for? For a second time and a third time, Gatikara addressed Jyotipala. "Come, dear Jyotipala, let's go see the Blessed One Kassapa, the perfected one, the fully awakened Buddha, for I regard it as good to see the Blessed One." And for the third time, Jyotipala said to him, "Enough, dear Gatikara, what's the use of seeing that baldy, that fake ascetic?" "Well then, dear Jyotipala, let's take some bathing paste or powdered shell and go to the river to bathe." Now, in India, in that time, they would just sometimes bathe just to cool off in the hot weather, and not really for the sake of cleaning themselves. Just it was an enjoyable pastime to do, to go and bathe in the river. "Yes, dear," replied Jyotipala. So that's what they did. Then Gatikara addressed Jyotipala. "Dear Jyotipala, the Buddha Kassapa's monastery is not far away. Let's go see the Blessed One Kassapa, the perfected one, the fully awakened Buddha. For I regard it as good to see that Blessed One." When he said this, Jyotipala said to him, "Enough, dear Gatikara. What's the use of seeing that baldy, that fake ascetic?" For a second time and the third time, Gatikara addressed Jyotipala. "Dear Jyotipala, the Buddha Kassapa's monastery is not far away. Let's go to see the Blessed One Kassapa, the perfected one, the fully awakened Buddha. For I regard it as good to see that Blessed One." For a third time, Jyotipala said to him, "Enough, dear Gatikara. What's the use of seeing that baldy, that fake ascetic?" Then Gatikara grabbed Jyotipala by the belt and said, "Dear Jyotipala, the Buddha Kassapa's monastery is not far away. Let's go to see the Blessed One Kassapa, the perfected one, the fully awakened Buddha. For I regard it as good to see that Blessed One." So Jyotipala undid his belt and said to Gatikara, "Enough, dear Gatikara. What's the use of seeing that baldy, that fake ascetic?" Then Gatikara grabbed Jyotipala by the hair of his freshly washed head and said, "Dear Jyotipala, the Buddha Kassapa's monastery is not far away. Let's go to see the Blessed One Kassapa, the perfected one, the fully awakened Buddha, for I regard it as good to see that Blessed One." That was the discussion they had. Then Jyotipala thought, it's incredible, it's amazing how this potter, Gatikara, though born in a lower caste, should presume to grab me by the hair of my freshly washed head. This must be no ordinary matter. he said to Gatikara, "You'd even go to this extent, dear Gatikara?" They were friends. "I even go to this extent, dear Jyotipala, for that is how good I regard it to see the Blessed One." "Well then, dear Gatikara, release me, we shall go." He agreed. Gatikara still had him by the hair. Then Gatikara the potter and Jyotipala the Brahmin student went to see the Buddha Kassapa. Gatikara bowed and sat down to one side, but Jyotipala exchanged greetings with the Buddha and sat down to one side. That showed one was a disciple and one was just going for a visit. Remember what Jyotipala said about how he regarded this fellow called Kassapa. And Gatikara bowed and Jyotipala exchanged greetings with the Buddha Kassapa and sat down to one side. And Gatikara said to the Buddha Kassapa, "Sir, this is my dear friend Jyotipala, a Brahmin student. Please teach him the Dhamma." Then the Buddha Kassapa, educated, encouraged, fired up and inspired Gatikara and Jyotipala with a Dhamma talk. Then they got up from the seat, bowed, both bowed this time, and respectively circled the Buddha Kassapa. Even Jyotipala did that this time, keeping him on the right before leaving. That keeping you on the right, that's the way of worship in most Asian countries. Even if I'm not mistaken, when they do a walking around like the Kabbalah in Mecca, they always keep the right side to their object of worship. And this is what we do even now. If you see the stupas outside, if you do an act of reverence to those stupas, you always circle it 3 times, keeping your right side focused, towards the stupa. Even when I was in Thailand many times, I mentioned there was an Air Force base, first of all the US, and then taken over by the Thai military. And often you'd see army helicopters go over Wat Pah Pong. And you look up into the sky, you could hear them. They would never go in a straight line. They go around the monastery and they circle around 3 times. The circumambulation, then they fly off wherever they were doing. So that was the tradition, which was really quite cool to see that. So this is what Jyotipala and Gatikara, best friends, now did. Jyotipala was now inspired. Then Jyotipala said to Gatikara, "Dear Gatikara, you have heard this teaching? So why don't you go forth from the lay life into homelessness and become a bhikkhu?" And then Gatikara replied, "Don't you know, dear Jyotipala, that I look after my blind old parents?" So then Jyotipala replied, "Well then, dear Gatikara, I shall go forth from the lay life to homelessness." Then Gatikara and Jyotipala went to the Buddha Kassapa, bowed and sat down to one side. Gatikara said to the Buddha Kassapa, "Sir, this is my dear friend Jyotipala, a Brahmin student. Please give him the going forth." And Jyotipala, the Brahmin student, received the going forth and the ordination in the Buddha Kassapa's presence. Now, please keep that in mind, how Jyotipala was ordained by the Buddha Kassapa. Now we go on for a little excursion in other matters about Gatikara. Not long after Jyotipala's ordination, a fortnight later, the Buddha Kassapa, having stayed in Vaibhalinga as long as he wished, set out for Benares. Travelling stage by stage, he arrived at Benares, where he stayed near Benares in the deer park at Isipatana. King Kiki of Kazi heard that he had arrived. He had the finest carriages harnessed. He then mounted a fine carriage, and along with other fine carriages, set out in full royal pomp from Benares to see the Buddha Kassapa. He went by carriages as far as the terrain allowed, then descended and approached the Buddha Kassapa on foot. The king bowed and sat to one side, and the Buddha, educated, encouraged, fired up and inspired him with a Dhamma talk. Then King Kiki said to the Buddha, "Sir, would the Buddha, together with the Sangha of monks, please accept tomorrow's meal from me?" And the Buddha Kassapa consented in silence. Then, knowing that the Buddha had consented, King Kiki got up from his seat, bowed, and respectfully circled the Buddha, keeping him on his right, before leaving. And when the night had passed, King Kiki had a variety of delicious foods prepared in his own home. Soft saffron rice with the dark grains picked out, served with many soups and sauces. Then he had the Buddha informed of the time, saying, "Sir, it is time, the meal is ready." Then Kassapa Buddha robed up in the morning, and taking his bowl and robe went to the home of King Kiki, where he sat on the seat spread out together with the Sangha of monks. Then King Kiki served and satisfied the Sangha, headed by the Buddha, with his own hands, with a variety of delicious foods. When the Buddha Kassapa had eaten and washed his hand and bowl, King Kiki took a low seat and sat to one side. There he said to the Buddha Kassapa, "Sir, may the Buddha please accept my invitation to reside in Benares for the rainy season. The Sangha will be looked after in the same style." "Enough, great king. I have already accepted an invitation for the rain's residence." For a second time and a third time, King Kiki said to the Buddha Kassapa, "Sir, may the Buddha please accept my invitation to reside in Benares for the rainy season. The Sangha will be looked after in the same style." "Enough, great king. I have already accepted an invitation for the rain's residence." Then King Kiki, thinking, "The Buddha does not accept my invitation to reside for the rains in Benares." He's a king, he doesn't usually get refused. And became sad and upset. Then King Kiki said to the Buddha Kassapa, "Sir, do you have another supporter better than me?" "Great king, there is a market town named Vaibhalinga, where there's a potter named Gatikara. He is my chief supporter. Now, great king, you thought, the Buddha does not accept my invitation to reside for the rains in Benares, and you became sad and upset. But Gatikara doesn't get upset, nor will be. Gatikara has gone for refuge to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. He does not kill living creatures, steal, commit sexual misconduct, lie, or take alcoholic drinks that cause negligence. 5 precepts he keeps. He has experiential confidence in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and has the ethics loved by the noble ones. You know what that means? He's a stream winner, if not more. He is free of doubt regarding suffering, its origin, its cessation, the practice that leads to its cessation. He knows the Four Noble Truths. He eats in one part of the day. He's celibate, ethical, and of good character. He has set aside gems and gold. I don't mean stored them away, just given them up. Set aside gems and gold and rejected gold and money. He's put down the shovel and doesn't dig the earth with his own hands. That means that he doesn't destroy the animals which depend upon the earth, the worms and the bugs, whatever else live in the ground. He takes what has crumbled off a river. He takes what has crumbled off by a riverbank or been dug up by mice and brings it back in a carrier. When he's made a pot from the clay, he says he doesn't sell them. He says anyone may leave some bags, sesame, mung beans or chickpeas here and take what they wish. He looks after his blind old parents, and since he has ended the 5 lower fetters, that means he's now a non-returner, more than just a stream winner. Since he's ended the 5 lower fetters, Gatikara will be reborn spontaneously and will become extinguished there, not liable to return from that world. That's describing the enlightenment fact of being an anagami, a non-returner. This one time, great king, said Buddha Kassapa, I was staying near the market town of Vebalinga. Then I robed up in the morning and taking my bowl and robe, went to the home of Gatikara's parents. For I said to them, excuse me, where has Bhagawa gone? And that was the name which the Buddha used, the Buddha Kassapa used for Gatikara. Now remember, his parents were blind. Your support has gone out, sir, but take rice from the pot and salt from the pan and eat. So that's what I did. And after eating, I got up from my seat and left. Then Gatikara, when he returned, went up to his parents and said, who took rice from the pot and salt from the pan, ate it and left? It was the Buddha Kassapa, my dear. Then Gatikara thought, wow, I'm so fortunate, so very fortunate, in that the Buddha Kassapa trusts me so much. Then joy and happiness did not leave him for a fortnight, or his parents for a week. I don't know how much of a Buddhist you are, but when I think of that, if the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, if he was still alive, and he went into my hut, and took some food or took whatever, took one of my tea bags or whatever. Oh, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And then Gatikara thought, I'm so fortunate, so very, very fortunate that the Buddha trusts me so much. Then joy and happiness did not leave him for a fortnight and his parents for a week. Another time, great king, I was staying near the same market town of Vebalinga. Then I robed up in the morning and taking my bowl and robe went to the home of Gatikara's parents. Well, I said to them, excuse me, where has Bhagawa gone? And that's Gatikara. Your support has gone out, sir. But take porridge from the pot and take sauce from the pan and eat. So that's what I did, and after eating I got up from my seat and left. Then Gatikara went up to his parents and said, who took porridge from the pot and sauce from the pan and ate it and left? It was the Buddha Kassapa, my dear. Then Gatikara thought, I'm so fortunate, so very fortunate. He trusted me so much by the Buddha Kassapa. Then joy and happiness did not leave him for another fortnight, or his parents for a week. Another time, great king, I was staying near the same market town of Webelinga. Now at that time my hut leaked, so I addressed the monks. Monks, go to Gatikara's home and find some grass. When I said this, those monks said to me, Sir, there's no grass there, but his workshop has a grass roof. Then go to the workshop and strip the grass. So that's what they did. Then Gatikara's parents said to those monks, Who's stripping the grass from the workshop? It's the monks, sister. The Buddha's hut is leaking. Take it, sirs. Take it, my dears. Then Gatikara went up to his parents and said, Who stripped the grass from the workshop? It was the monks, dear. It seems the Buddha's hut is leaking. Then Gatikara thought, I'm so fortunate, so very fortunate to be trusted so much by the Buddha Kassapa. Then joy and happiness did not leave him for another fortnight, or his parents for a week. Then the workshop remained with the sky for a roof for the whole 3 months of the rains, but no rain fell on it. And that, great king, is what Gatikara the potter is like. And Gatikara the potter is fortunate, very fortunate to be trusted by the Buddha Kassapa. That's what King Kiki said. Then King Kiki sent around 500 cartloads of rice, soft saffron rice and suitable sauces to Gatikara. He was a poor potter. I don't know if anyone counted them 500, but a lot. Then one of the king's men approached Gatikara and said, Sir, these 500 cartloads of rice, soft saffron rice and suitable sauces have been sent to you by King Kiki of Kasi. Please accept them. The king has many duties and much to do. I have enough. Let this be for the king himself. And then Ananda. Now this is so he refused them. And then this last paragraph is one of the main reasons which I like teaching this sutta. Ananda, this is our Buddha now talking. Surely the Brahmin student Jyotipala must have been someone else at that time. But you should not see it like this. Buddha was saying this. I myself was a student Jyotipala at that time. This is what the Buddha said. And satisfied, Venerable Ananda was happy with what the Buddha said. That was previous life of the Buddha. The Buddha Siddhartha Gautama, who called the Buddha Kassapa a baldy, fake ascetic. One Buddha talking about one future Buddha talking about the current Buddha at his time, who didn't want to get ordained, didn't even want to go and see the Buddha Kassapa, was eventually dragged by the hair and said, this is not ordinary. And so I went to see the Buddha Kassapa. And after seeing him being instructed, then I said, why don't you ordain with him? I can't, I've got blind parents. Okay, I'll be ordained by him. I don't know why people don't mention that story when they talk about bodhisattvas. People who will be Buddhas in the future. Because even the Siddhartha Gautama, then at that time Jyotipala, could not recognize a Buddha. But as soon as he saw one, wow, that was enough. Then he ordained. Now, is there any other evidence? Now, this next part, the Samyutta Nikaya. This is the Devata, connected discourses with Devatas. And this particular sutta with Devatas, it's a very short sutta, but they go together with what was just been said. Gatikara. The Devata Gatikara. And he was talking to the Blessed One, to the Buddha, just after the Buddha's enlightenment, under the Bodhi tree. 7 bhikkhus, reborn in Aviha, the province of India, have been, 7 bhikkhus, reborn in Aviha, province of India, have been fully liberated, with lust and hatred utterly destroyed. They have crossed over attachment to the world. The Blessed One, it's the Buddha Gautama. And who are those who crossed the swamp, the realm of death so hard to cross, who having left the human body have overcome the celestial bond? And Gatikara, Upaka and Palaganda with Pukusati, these are 3. Then Bhaddiya, Bhattadeva, and Bahudanti and Pingya, these having left the human body have overcome the celestial bond. And now our Buddha. Good is the word you speak of them, of those who have abandoned Mara's snares, whose Dharma was it that they understood, whereby they cut through the bondage of existence. Gatikara is not apart from the Blessed One, is not apart from your teaching. By having understood your Dhamma, they cut through the bondage of existence. When name and form ceases, stops without remainder. By understanding that Dhamma here, they cut through the bondage of existence. The Blessed One, deep is your speech that you utter, hard to understand, very hard to grasp. Having understood whose Dhamma do you utter such speech? And now Gatikara lets on who he is. In the past, I was the potter Gatikara in Vaibhalinga. I supported my mother and father then, as a lay follower of the Buddha Kassapa. I abstained from sexual intercourse. I was celibate, free from carnal ties. I was your fellow villager. In the past, I was your friend. I am the one who knows these 7 liberated bhikkhus, who with lust and hatred utterly destroyed, have crossed over attachment to the world. And the Buddha, our Buddha, just so it was at that time, as you say, O Bhagawa, that was the kind of the informal name of Gatikara. In the past you were the potter Gatikara in Vaibhalinga. You supported your mother and father then as a lay follower of the Buddha Kassapa. You abstained from sexual intercourse, you were celibate, free from carnal ties. You were my fellow villager, in the past you were my friend. Such was the meeting that took place between those friends from the past, both now inwardly developed, bearers of their final bodies. That's the Gatikara Sutta, where Gatikara, many thousands of years later, went to see his old friend, formerly Jyotipala, now the Buddha. I don't know about you, but I love that story. It really means something to me. And that's why I say the Gatikara Sutta. That was somebody in the past. Even there was a Buddha living in the same region, walking distance, he refused to go and see him, until his best friend Gatikara helped out. So if anybody if anybody ever grabs you by the hair and say, come and see this monk or monastery, don't refuse. And this is what it happens. In a later life, that's your best friend who brought you to the Dhamma. Okay. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Oh boy. Has anyone got any question about that before we go off and do the next interviews? If you have, please put your hand up. I kind of feel that was kind of amazing. And I said that because also yesterday, when somebody coming to see the Buddha who we knew before, there's a number of those. What about who was responsible for causing the Buddha to teach? Who went to ask him, please teach? Yes, thank you. Who was actually saying, oh, you did, well done, Kat. Oh, no, you did. Brahma Sahampati. Who was Brahma Sahampati? No, it wasn't Gatikara, no, a friend of Gatikara's. Sahampati was also a monk under Kassapa the Buddha. He's also mentioned in the suttas here. So, imagine you were friends together in a previous life under a Buddha. And they called Brahma Sahampati, but he was an anagami, not a god. He was the same level as Gatikara. And because of that, and the same level as that heavenly being who told yesterday's sutta. What's his name again? Yesterday. But? Who? Bhaddiya Sutta. Sorry? Bahiya. Sorry, I thought I said Bhaddiya. Bahiya. Bahiya. He was contacted to say he's not an arahat, but there is an arahat not far, well, actually quite far away, which was the Buddha Gautama. And that Bahiya, who was he contacted by? The Deva, an anagami. The anagami came to see him. They were friends before, and said, there is another Buddha around. They didn't actually mention how much that Bahiya's advisor, an anagami, how he knew the Buddha, the current Buddha, because they were monks together in previous life under Kassapa. But this is the most detailed. These were not just people who knew each other, but Gatikara and Jotipala were like the best friends. They hung out together. And there was Gatikara was responsible for Jotipala eventually becoming our Buddha. And now I'm going to throw in a wobbly, as they say. A wobbly is like an interesting conjecture, which to me seems kind of so obvious. If the Buddha, our Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, if in his previous life he was a monk with Kassapa the Buddha, it was not so long ago, the previous Buddha, would he not recall that life when he was meditating? Was that where he, as a little kid, he could learn, he didn't need to learn, spontaneously got into a first jhana? How could a little kid do that? is there any truth in that traditional belief that once the Buddha was born, he walked 7 steps and he spoke, "This is my last life," which was accurate? Was it because he knew that he was a non-returner? Where did the Buddha get reborn from? From which realm did he descend to come into his last birth as our Buddha in India? So his previous birth was from the Sutta realm. And there's another saying, I haven't got it written down, but that once returners for the most part get reborn in the Sutta realm. And if someone had been practicing and ordained as a monk with a Buddha, you'd think that he had enough progress on the path that he would be not just a stream winner, but a non-returner. Sorry, once returner. So the Buddha would have known, this is my last life. So the Buddha didn't arrive in his last birth empty-handed. He'd had a previous life not that long ago with Kassapa, the Buddha. That kind of informs your understanding about Buddhism and where these things come from. So I hope you understood that teaching and revere it half as much as I do. Thank you all for listening. Again, come on. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Oh boy. Okay, so now we have the interviews.
These days I inspire myself. Yeah, I really enjoy not that.